Hello, my name is David Boles and I'm a Climate Pact Ambassador, and welcome to the first issue of my podcast. I would like to thank the Climate Pact Ambassadors for facilitating and urging all the Climate Pact Ambassadors in Ireland, which is about 30 strong I believe at the moment, and have a look, Google Climate Pact Ambassador there for the next cohort, for people that are looking to get involved in climate action and have an impact on their communities in the positive. So first port of call, I would like to thank EDEMA and the South Eastern Energy Agency, who are the facilitators of running the programme from the EU, and they have given us access to great information such as the Climate Action Academy. There was a great podcast or webinar there last week with professors from Cambridge talking about misinformation, disinformation and fake news, and all about how to get your information across to the public in the face of misinformation, fake news and moneyed interests trying to slow down the transition to a low carbon economy. So as I say, my name is David Boles and I spent the last year as a Climate Pact Ambassador. A shout out to EDEMA, who's the main touch point for the Climate Pact Ambassadors, and we have an array of people from academia and the political spheres that are doing great work around climate action. A lady called Shirley has just released her podcast, which I found excellent, and all the great work they're doing in conjunction with the Mayor of Cork and all the rest of her network. So just a little about my journey. I suppose I focused in on climate action and the climate crisis from 2009 when I returned to education in University College Dublin. I did a graduate diploma in green technologies, and that made me aware of the various legislation around reducing our carbon at a national level. And then as you dig deeper, you find out that I suppose the climate action hasn't really taken hold yet, that we're still emitting and using fossil fuels wholesale across the world, and that has to change as extreme weather events get more extreme, increasing people or immigration of people all around the world, immigration, and quite frankly they are just running from extreme weather events, the inability to produce subsistence farming and such that they have in the past, the desertification of places like Syria and stuff, whereby people can no longer grow their food, so they have to move in order to survive, and everyone is very interested in survival. So just a bit more about myself, I suppose. I did an engineering degree in UCD graduated in 1996 with a civil engineering degree. Did a number of years working as kind of a site engineer on building sites, and then 2009 at the financial crisis along came, that's when I did the graduate diploma, and I have ever since sought to carve out a career in the sustainability space for myself, which is proving quite difficult, but onward and upward. So I want to now talk a little bit about what I've been trying to do over the last number of years, and I've come to learn that behavioural change or people's choices is an important part of the transition. And at an individual level, it kind of fits in with the European pillar on the polluter must pay, that we as an individual must make changes in order for the nation states as a whole to reach their carbon targets. So there's a few kind of epistemological errors, or that's kind of design faults in basing national or carbon targets on the cross-economy sectors, which is referred to as the emission gap. And so I've been working hard to try solve the emission gap and come up with a solution for carbon leakage. So the emission gap refers to our carbon targets are based on the cross-economy sectors, which are manufacturing, power production, buildings, transport, agriculture and land use. And if you look at it in a national sense, if you take Ireland or say most countries, the consumptive emissions, which is the sum of all the emissions per capita, so the emissions a person is responsible for due to their consumption, is about 70% larger than the national carbon targets. And this is explained by the global economy and imports and exports. So the carbon targets are just based on goods and services produced within those sectors I mentioned above. However, that is not really feasible, because the emission carbon target is or the actual emissions of a nation, when you take into account all the imported goods, is about 70% larger. You might have heard the likes of Greta and all going on about this. So how do we approach that? And we haven't even really started to attack the emission target as it stands based on cross-economy sectors. So we've a long way to go there, and even if we reach those targets, there's still that deficit of the difference between consumptive emissions and national emissions. So how do we tackle that? In the last number of years, I suppose since 2009, I've done 3 graduate diplomas, and I've done also 3 kind of work internships with different companies in Dublin, Ireland, to increase my knowledge. And over the years of study, it's become something of a hobby for myself. I have researched and done desktop studies on all the different solutions and the legislation and how we might come to a solution to tackle the emission gap problem and carbon leakage. So over these years, I believe I've come up with a solution, and that's what I'm currently doing at the moment. I'm seeking funding to launch a climate fintech. So basically that kind of takes care of the consumptive emissions. So, well, it doesn't take care of the consumptive emissions, but there's a knowledge transfer to the public through this startup, which will allow people to know the carbon embedded in their consumption. And it maps it out into the different lifestyle emission categories. So thereby people can now get a full picture of where the emissions are coming from the activities within their life. And now the next step is I wanted to connect the man on the street or the individual to the national carbon targets. So we're way beyond reduce, reuse, recycle. And as Sonar, the author of Foolproof, who gave us a webinar last week, mentioned that there's complete misinformation around the reduce, reuse, recycle, because it doesn't actually reduce any carbon emissions at all. So I have embarked on trying to solve this problem. Next we have, so how did I do this? So basically we have set up a fintech not unlike Revolut, and through outsourcing and the use of the Alan Solution Index, people, when they make a purchase, will be told the carbon embedded within those purchases, and then conveniently map it out into the different lifestyle emission categories. Now, so the person has made their purchase, it's all fully automated, which is an important part of the procedure, whereby people are unlikely, just going on the kind of human condition, people are unlikely to engage with any app or tool whereby they have to input information, so everything has to be fully automated. So we tick the box there whereby they're already using their debit card to make purchases, but now when they make a purchase, over time their whole emission profile is mapped out. Okay, so that's the knowledge transfer, which is very, very important. How can people change their behaviour if they don't know the emissions resulting from their current behaviour? So hopefully we'll solve that problem. And the next step is to tie consumptive emissions to national emissions. So as we map out the emission profile of the individual, we suggest that, as the polluter must pay principle, they are responsible for those emissions. So here, would you like to make a contribution based on your own emission profile towards a greenhouse gas reduction project from their locality? So that's very important as well, that the projects are local, I believe, to enhance traction. So people will engage, they can see that there is energy facilities through the pooling of the resources. There's energy facilities and other greenhouse gas reduction measures and biodiversity support, etc., in their jurisdictions. So they're much more inclined to use it because they can see the benefit locally to their communities, to their people, to their way of living. So the individual has made the purchase, they're building up the information of the carbon embedded in their consumption, and now we ask them, based on a social cost of carbon of €110 a tonne, to give them a kind of a top line figure. Often the figure will be too expensive for them to pay. For instance, if you did €100 worth of groceries, the carbon embedded in that would be €20 plus, and this is unaffordable. So we give people the choice. They can choose the amount they want to contribute to a greenhouse gas reduction project, and they can actually choose the project in their vicinity or to their liking or to their whatever they're working in, or if family members are involved in certain activities, they can direct the capex or the money towards these projects to enhance them and to ensure the rollout of greater and greater numbers of these projects. So we have all that in place at the moment, and I suppose the thing that's slowing us down the most is access to funding, and great difficulties around even people understanding the use, which I believe is quite innovative, the use of consumptive emissions, matching them to the national emissions, and reducing both simultaneously. So it's something I've been working on a very, very long time, and I'm very proud of. So behavioural change is quite important, and how I kind of came across this, there was a Japanese project kind of defining lifestyle emissions and how we must connect the individuals to lifestyle emission categories in order to reduce our national emissions. And from there I devised this domestic greenhouse gas reduction program, which due to it being rolled out on digital mobile, will enable everyone to access it, and a fully inclusive model whereby people can, if they do not have the resources, can make a contribution in 10 cents or coppers towards their projects, and it will give everyone a great feeling of relief, or the fact that people, and especially our young people, are suffering from climate anxiety, means that when they can take an action toward climate action, it relieves said anxiety and reduces the problems they experience through mental health difficulties due to the climate change scenario. And so is wrapping that up, that is what I've been doing in a while now. We're very close to rolling it out. We have all the IT infrastructure designed and constructed, and we've done a lot of work around this and have completed a substantial amount of the finished product with very little money spent, so I'm very proud of that. But hopefully it all won't go to waste now, and we are on the verge of getting our initial funding, fingers crossed. So hopefully you will hear about, the company is called Climatemoney, you will hear about Climatemoney, and we will try to push it out across Ireland first as a kind of a pilot beta testing, and then after we will seek to enter into all the other European countries, in the United States and some of the rest of the Western world. Within that program as well, I suppose I've studied a lot of the United Nations Clean Development Mechanism joint implementation, which were processes that enabled the flow of money to the global south from the global north to help them with their adaptation measures and different processes that enable them to reach their carbon targets under the Paris Agreement. So we have a lot of work to do, hopefully, and you will hear about us very, very shortly. So, as I say now, this is my first podcast, so it will take me a while just to relax and settle down, and hopefully I'm portraying the information that I want to across in a coherent and clear way. Yeah, so it's a big process really. We have engaged as well with a lot of the grassroots groups. In Ireland we have groups, they were ones like One Future that have just changed their names to Friends of the Earth, Dunleary, and a lot of these sectors or organisations are of the older demographic, or people kind of at retirement age, and are very concerned about what they are leaving their children. And I've also made contacts with a lot of the, including Extinction Rebellion, a lot of the groups that are looking to make a change, I suppose, in the interest of people, or the greater good, rather than corporations just making lots of money and such. So hopefully we see, one of the main motivations as well is there's or where I started from, is there's a colossal fiscal anchor, or cost to, for instance, Ireland are estimated to spend between 3 and 7 billion euros a year for non-compliance in reaching their emissions targets. So there is a space for a climate action instrument within the multi-point emission sectors, or the non-ETS sectors, to accelerate or enhance the decarbonisation of all our activities. So that's what I've been at, and to be honest, I think I have achieved that, but there seems to be a lack of understanding, or because it is a new mechanism or something that hasn't really operated before, there seems to be, I am running into a few obstacles. But determination and an inability to step aside or kind of move on with my life, I think will get me there in the end. But as with all the startups and new companies, there's an awful lot of work to be done and no guarantee of success. But we have lots of agencies and government departments and NGOs that I suppose are on the same ticket, or they want the same results. So hopefully we will get support from that and move the whole digital payment systems away from, gambling as such on crypto and stocks and all that, which isn't great for our younger people, and enable them to have access to action, climate action, that will relieve their climate anxiety symptoms, which is very important. And so that's about it for today. The Climate Ambassador Programme, as I said, run by the Southeast Energy Agency, and thank you very much for including us over the last year. We've had lots of webinars. We met in the Weir Hotel just off O'Connell Street there, had a great day out, lovely lunch and all, and a big thanks to those people. They've also provided some resources for us with there's a PR company here called Beach Hut, and there's a certain amount of budget to help the Climate Pact ambassadors with their own projects, and they have promoted the workings together, trying to bring the different Climate Pact ambassadors together. As such, everyone lives busy lives, and sometimes that's difficult, but all of us, they've tried their best, and much appreciated by myself anyway. I'll talk a bit more about Climatemoney. It's a greenhouse gas reduction programme for the multi-point emission sectors, which is agriculture, transport, built environment and land use. And then we have, so it's made up of different components, and it's all about connecting the different societal stakeholders together towards reaching net carbon zero and beyond. So we have the fintech component, which brings automation to people. There's no form filling out. It will actually calculate your emission carbon profile over time. And so that's great. There's a huge number of startups that are trying to formulate people's emission profile, but they have a big, to get beyond the human condition whereby people aren't very inclined to fill out forms and such. So the automation element is very important there. And then we have kind of through an API with an algorithm that is all fully automated, which is great. And the next component is the greenhouse gas reduction program as such, and that is based on like all the voluntary carbon market emission reductions is based on the ISO 14064,2.3 is the formulation or the count of the carbon from any emission reduction project. So working in conjunction with University College Dublin, we have come up with our own standard for the compliance piece to ensure that people, when they use the Climatemoney platform, can be assured that any emission reductions claimed actually exist in the real world. So that's a very important piece as well when it comes to the reporting of emission reductions at a national level back to Europe, and is actually written into law now, whereby emission reductions must be documented and shown, and that is done generally through the ISO 10464 standard. It's not done through that. People create their own standards, but it's kind of everything, as far as I can see, is based off the ISO 14064 standard. So then we have that's the kind of compliance piece, and that will be presented to the public on just an open ledger. And so if people want to contribute towards a project, they can look at the validation document there, as I say, constructed by University College Dublin, and that will give them confidence and transparency to the carbon reductions that we're selling is compliant and, as I say, happens in the real world. So that's a very important part. And what happens to these funds, I suppose, people will be very interested in. So all the funds will be going towards the CapEx cost of new greenhouse gas reduction projects from the cross-economy sectors. And we operate on a kind of transaction basis to make the company viable. But all the funds we're actually accumulating the micro contributions of all the individuals towards a new, say, AD project or new any kind of replacement of fossil fuel fertilizers. So any project which can be shown to reduce emissions by an action in those sectors is valid for participation within the Climatemoney domestic greenhouse gas reduction program. So that's it in a nutshell. I have gone through it there briefly. It's a bit long-winded maybe, but hopefully when it's on your phone, it'll all be very intuitive and people can operate and make contributions to their local community and their nation. So simultaneously through Climatemoney, we're looking to reduce consumptive emissions, national emissions for national compliance, and to improve standards for the people living in Ireland initially, and hopefully we get to spread all across the world. So thank you very much for your time, and all other Climate Pact ambassadors, lovely to meet you. About 30 strong in Ireland. I suggest that you might Google Climate Pact ambassadors to get involved in the next cohort. Very informative, get to meet lovely people. And that's my piece for today. Thank you and take care. you.